Welcome to All Ask the Questions Around Here, the podcast where we explore life's unexpected intersections. I'm your host, Dr. Joseph Elisha. Today, like always, we'll journey from the challenging conversations to the inspiring and lighthearted discussions that connect us all. Let's begin. So, by popular demand, I have the famous Dr. Scherger back on my show. For those of you who don't know Dr. Scherger or didn't watch the first episode, Dr. Scherger is a renowned physician, a family physician who lives here in the Coachella Valley. And he has had a very distinguished career in medicine as a clinical professor. He has won multiple awards in teaching and clinical education, as well as research. He has authored multiple books, has been a favorite of residents, and is still actively involved in teaching medical residents here in the Coachella Valley, and very heavily invested in our community. And I'm very excited to have you on board with us again, Dr. Scherger, and wanted to expand a little bit on some of the topics that we kind of touched on our last episode. And I know that you have a lot of exciting information to share with us on today's podcast, and which is going to be focused more on anti-aging medicine. Welcome, Dr. Scherger.
Well, thank you, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, in one sentence, how would you explain the current state of longevity medicine to someone who reads mostly the headlines in our world today?
Well, we have been biohacking aging for a long time. The life expectancy 100 years ago was about 40 to 45, and it's been extended. But most of that was by preventing diseases, especially infectious diseases, and better hygiene and other things. But unfortunately, the American population and in most of the Western world, the number of years that we're living and the number of years that we're healthy, that's known as the health span. Our lifespan has kind of leveled off and even declined some during COVID and some of the drug deaths and epidemics, but also we're just not as healthy as we used to be, and overall, and our health span has been in decline. Now, having said that, that's not true for people who are avoiding the things in our environment that are causing us to age and die earlier. And so longevity medicine kind of begins by stopping the damage that's around us. The fact that we live in a toxic food environment, and there are things in our social situations that can impact our health. You know, we have pretty much eliminated smoking, which was the leading cause of death for a long, long time. But our food and the food industry, which is more geared towards selling product than it is toward promoting our health, has created problems that need to be avoided. So anti-aging medicine kind of begins with increasing our health span based on what we have, and nutrition is about 80% of the equation. We really are what we eat. So the critical things is to get away from processed foods. Parkinson's disease is going up exponentially, and I met with even the leader of the local Parkinson Association, who understands, as the researchers do, that it's due to herbicides and pesticides that are used in our agriculture. And if you want to avoid Parkinson's disease, like my father had and died from, you really need to, eat clean, if you will, and avoid those products. And that can be done. But then also physical activity, all the things we talked about in the last podcast. But in anti-aging medicine, this is where the immortalists get together. There's people thinking that we're going to understand the biology of aging so well that we can live for a long, long time. And, for example, Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize Foundation, Harvard Medical School graduate, believes in his longevity guidebook that the first person who's going to live to 150 has already been born, is his prediction. And to take it to that level means that we actually, stop some of the biological trends that cause our limited life expectancy. We all know from having dogs and cats and other pets that every species, every person has kind of a life expectancy. There's a veterinarian who wrote the book The Forever Dog, who by giving very healthy foods and the right lifestyle to dogs, you can get them to live healthy for 25 years, which is often double what most dogs live. It's a wonderful, popular book. And she actually started the trend with some of the healthy dog foods that you put in the refrigerator. And there's some very funny commercials about the farmer's dog and others about that. And that kind of leads to that anti-aging. But what I find interesting is that can we really biohack aging? And at the conference I was at in Las Vegas, a lot of new information was presented. Bill Falloon, who's 70 years old himself and very vibrant and active, is the founder of Life Extension, the magazine and the various supplements. And he gives a very scientific talk at this conference every year. The highlights of his talk was that everyone should be on metformin. Metformin is a very interesting compound that's been around for 40 years or longer for treating diabetes, but we find out that people who take metformin, do live longer than average people, even if they have diabetes. And I have a very normal blood sugar, but I take metformin every day based on the number of things it does to extend life. That's one example. And we're still even discovering why metformin contributes to longevity. But it clearly seems to improve our metabolism in a way that leads to longevity. It has cancer prevention benefits. It has heart disease prevention benefits, the two big killers. It has arthritis prevention benefits. So there's a number of things there. Nicotinamide is another big headliner known as NAD, and NAD does DNA repair because again we're preventing damage, clearing out dead cells. These things are important. Resveratrol is another major headliner in the anti-aging space for its benefits to us in extending longevity. So you can do it through targeted supplements like that. There are activities like, probably the most powerful rejuvenation biology that's available is to have your own stem cells harvested and putting in your own stem cells to, thanks to Yamanaka in Japan, we learned that you can even take ordinary adipose stem cells from underneath your skin and make them pluripotent just like embryonic stem cells. I'm going to be getting my every 4-month stem cell infusion a little bit later this month now. I'm doing it more often the older that I get. Stem cells from other sources like embryos or umbilical cords probably get broken down by your body quickly because they're seen as foreign material. So you're much better off with the autologous stem cells.
I do want to take a moment and, make what may seem like an obvious disclosure that, Dr. Scherger are going to be talking about a lot of different treatments and, supplements and medications, and that you would only use this for informational purposes, and to always consult your doctor before, taking any of these medications, although there's a lot of evidence behind them. I do want to go back a little bit. I was deeply influenced by Dr. Peter Attia's book called Outlive, where he makes a very important point that it's not enough to just be able to grow to the age of 80, 90, 100, 100 plus. If you have all these chronic illnesses weighing you down, neurodegenerative diseases, heart disease, diabetes, and all this, you do want to get to that age, but you want to get to that age in a functional state where you're able to enjoy life. So quality of life is obviously very important. And one of the things that he talks about this very interesting drug called rapamycin, which I know you're familiar with, and it's increasingly finding its way into the mainstream media as this wonder drug. Can you expand a little bit on that for us?
Well, it's a fascinating story, Joseph. Rapamycin was discovered in Easter Island, of all places, and Peter went there and saw where it came from originally. And it is a very powerful compound that has extended the life of a number of animals. It's had very mixed results in humans. First of all, it's very expensive. I've tried to prescribe it. I've had patients who wanted it, but and it's used to avoid rejection in some cancer therapies. But its results in human trials have kind of kept it away from prime time. But it is one of the compounds that it's looked at as having the potential to extend life and prevent aging.
Do we know how it does that? I know, and we're getting a little technical here, the mTOR gene and all of that. Are we talking about the process of turning on or off certain sets of genes in our body that are involved in the regular life cycle of our cells?
Well, yes, it's we're really the action is not so much in our genes. Our genes is a blueprint for our life, and it's the proteins that are made, the many proteins that are made, and it's really affecting those protein metabolism that contribute to aging. So we don't know exactly how it works at all. It's a very exciting area of study, but it's gotten some downsides in human trials, have gotten into some trouble with it.
What about these things called the senescent cells, or what we call the zombie cells? What about these things?
Well, cleaning those up, these are compounds that are called senolytics. Senolytics go in and clean out the garbage or these zombie cells. And that's really what nicotinamide plays an active role in doing, and resveratrol to a certain degree also. And David Sinclair, the biologist at Harvard who wrote the book Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, and continues to be very energetic online and with podcasts, is a big promoter of metformin, nicotinamide, resveratrol as really critical things for dealing with all the helping with autophagy, which is programmed cell death, because we have cells that are naturally dying on a regular basis. But as you can imagine, we pick up a lot of sort of garbage that accumulates, and that's what the senolytic compounds are designed to do. But the real excitement has to do with, like, for example, Greg Fahey, who's been awarded as the top scientist. I work with him with a company called Intervene Immune, because he's shown that the senescence, the wearing out of our immune system, is the leading cause of why we get old and die. And I see that in my patients over 90. They can't heal wounds anymore. They don't have the immune cells to go in. They die from pneumonia and even influenza, COVID. These kind of infections are due to a lack of immunity. And boosting the immune system is really what his work is all about. It does require a year or two of going on growth hormone to regenerate your immune system, which has its upsides and downsides. But that's one other exciting area. One other big one is plasma exchange. Our plasma doesn't have any rejection factors. So while you can't get young blood from people, that as a good match, anyone can get young plasma, and that has become a very hot area because that rejuvenates our body and in a sense provides us with proteins that can really make us younger. It's called parabiosis. So I think most of the energy right now, rapamycin was a topic at the anti-aging conference in the past, but really wasn't talked about much this year. And but certainly plasma exchange, stem cells work, those things were more the hot topics.
In my own reading, anyways, I am hearing about, cellular reprogramming and gene approaches and biomarkers, these things that are kind of like what they call epigenetic clocks that basically are telling us, yes, your chronological age might be 50, but your cells, they're kind of acting like you're 60. Can you unwrap that for us a little bit?
Well, we have a lot of biomarkers that reflect our epigenetic age, and there's some of them are better than others, certainly, but it is kind of nice to do healthy things for yourself. That's what I tell patients is do healthy things every day in terms of your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your keeping stress under control, keeping your relationships healthy and meaning and purpose, all those cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle, and rejuvenate yourself as best you can. I think light therapy was a big deal at this meeting, and I invested in a light therapy system in my own Restore Health office. It's become quite popular. We know that we can make Parkinson's disease better with light therapy, wearing the helmet that we have. And now I'm going to be using this stuff in earnest. It's the scientific name is photobiomodulation, or PBM, and it's got a very, very rich literature that both infrared and near-infrared light on the spectrum, which is incredibly safe, doesn't hurt your eyes. As a matter of fact, can even improve macular degeneration. It's very exciting healing benefits. So if we can stop the damage and heal our body, get rid of all those zombie cells, as you call it. Peter Attia is very much, he calls it the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of how we may die. So he wants us to outlive by keeping those four horsemen, cancer and heart disease and genetic problems away from us, so we can live longer. And so this is all part of anti-aging medicine. It's very exciting.
Now, we've obviously talked about therapies, tests, supplements that can realistically be out of reach for a lot of consumers out there who are concerned about their health. They do want to live longer. What are, in your opinion, what are the top 5 cost-effective ways that people can approach living healthier and longer?
One thing that you can do that doesn't cost you anything is to get the ultra-processed food out of your diet, get the sugar out of your diet, get over your sugar addiction, and basically eat the healthy food of nature. Get out there and take a walk every day and breathe some good oxygen and fresh air. Do some strength training. Work on your balance and your stretching to keep your body as healthy as it can be. You can train yourself to sleep very well, 7 to 8 hours every night, and make sure that you're not allowing stress. You're keeping yourself happy and optimistic. You're applying all those things, and none of that costs any money. And there's some cornerstone supplements that are critical. I think that the fish oil, DHA for the brain and EPA for the heart, if the work that's being done by the biologists on avoiding cognitive decline, put that at the top of the list for supplements. You got to have a healthy vitamin D level, because our normal evolution made vitamin D. Old skin doesn't convert it from the sun, and anyone who's avoiding healthy fats, which is the wrong thing to do. You want to eat healthy fats from eggs and quality meat and fish. But you need to have a good vitamin D level for repair and longevity. Probably looked at the conference as the most important level. So everyone should know their vitamin D25 level and take vitamin D3 as a supplement. We now know that vitamin K is not just one vitamin for blood clotting. That K2 is vital for getting the calcium into our bones and not in our blood vessels where it doesn't belong and causes trouble. So those are critical. And again, what I call the Sinclair trio of supplements, metformin, nicotinamide, and resveratrol. It's become popular to do IV NAD, which drives up the cost, but I've not seen convincing evidence that getting your NAD IV is necessary.
To the average, listener who is listening to this podcast, we are bombarded by so much information, and there's obviously, because we live in a free competition environment, we see so many different types of supplements. Some are in liquid form, and as you mentioned, some are in IV form. You get it intravenously. What, in your opinion, is the best way to get our supplements?
Well, first of all, get the right amount from the right supplier. It's been well known that because supplements are not regulated by the FDA, if you get cheap knockoff supplements, it may not even be what you think you're getting. So, pick a supplier that makes quality supplements. If you live in the Coachella Valley here, you can go to Clark's or Sprouts or even Whole Foods and talk to an expert in the supplements and be guided to some very good products, which don't necessarily cost more than others. And so take the ones and take them every day regularly. They really are. You think of them as part of your diet, if you will, and do that well. But that's one small part of the whole picture of anti-aging lifestyle.
Let's say that I go into a supermarket and, as I'm looking at these, different types of supplements, do we take them all at the same time, or what is there like an effective time of the day where one should typically take these medications?
It hasn't been worked out specifically about the timing. Some of them might stimulate you, and you should be taking them in the morning, like I do with my SAMI, for example, for methylation benefit. But most of them I take at night. I have the rationalization that while I'm sleeping, I'm going to let them go in and do their thing and go to the right place. So I take pretty much all my supplements in the evening. Some of them are very healthy for promoting sleep. There's some wonderful supplements that contain not only melatonin, but tryptophan and valerian root and various herbal mixes, ashwagandha, various things that relax the brain and promote sleep. Find that very helpful.
Sure. I want to go back to a topic that's talked about quite a lot, but probably poorly understood, and that's stem cell treatment. And people who have stem cells taken out of their body, re-injected back into the body. There was a lot of controversy around that. FDA was looking into doctors who were, doing it for a time, and it kind of seemed like a wild, wild west for a bit. How do you assess the state of knowledge on stem cells?
Well, it's the state of knowledge is that it's a cornerstone of rejuvenation biology, and all the UC medical schools and the other major medical schools have started up departments of rejuvenation biology. They're doing research showing that some of its benefits, but they wanted to kind of keep the handle on things. Dr. Elliot Lander actually a urologist here. He and his friend Mark Berman, who's a plastic surgeon, they founded the Cell Surgical Network and started using your own autologous stem cell work way back in 2010. And they do have a whole body of research that they've done, including published about its safety. And I consider the restraint on that more political than medical, if you will. And I think that I happen to believe that in the data, and they have a book called Stem Cell Revolution where they talk about all the organ systems that stem cells are helpful for. So I believe that there's the FDA has been trying to keep the cork on the lid on the bottle of using stem cells, but I think it really is the future of rejuvenation biology, and will go a long way in keeping our bodies young.
Do you think that stem cell therapy will have a kind of foundational impact on the treatment of autoimmune diseases?
Well, I do think it certainly could. Autoimmune diseases mainly come from our unhealthy microbiome. The microbiome is where probably 70% of our immune system lives. There are more organisms in our microbiome than there are cells in our body. It's huge. And having a healthy microbiome is vital to your health and longevity. And I think stem cells can help repopulate that, but again, you repopulate it by doing all the right things and stopping all the wrong things that poison your microbiome.
Going back to the treatment and infusion of stem cells, let's use myself as an example. I had a rotator cuff done on my left shoulder, something that I wouldn't want to go through again. And I think I have the same condition on the right side, which is my dominant side. What is the strength of the evidence out there in regards to treating that rotator cuff tear with stem cell therapy?
Well, the evidence is all anecdotal because no one has ever paid for large clinical trials. But the anecdotal, the case series of improvement is quite large. But it's, you might say if you're waiting for heavy research, but there's no question about it that having your own stem cells injected into your shoulder can rejuvenate cartilage, it can rejuvenate tendons, things that are still there but need some help. There's no question that it can help. The orthopedists and others are using kind of the poor man's stem cells called PRP, and platelet-rich plasma, which has growth factors and has a stem cell-like rejuvenation to tissue, and that's being done kind of mainstream now. And I think that it's a alternative to actually getting your real stem cells, which are given to you with some growth factor from the blood at the same time. So there is the PRP, platelet-rich plasma growth factor effect also.
Where do we get stem cells from our body if we're going to get our own?
Well, there's two places that one is from the bone marrow by doing bone marrow biopsies, but it is painful, and also as we age, our bone marrows are not a rich source of stem cells anymore. Evolution put most of our stem cells under our skin because most of our injuries that kept us were all surface injuries. So our adipose tissue called mesenchymal stem cells are where the abundance is. So the doctor like Dr. Lander can do a mini liposuction. I've had it done twice and they can harvest, 50,000 60,000 stem cells pretty easily. And what's really exciting is that they can be grown on cell culture for the rest of your life. So that doesn't have to be repeated. There are cryobanks that will keep your stem cells and grow them. So I'm going to be getting my stem cells here in about 2 weeks again, and they order them from the cryobank in Florida. They're shipped by Federal Express, but they can rejuvenate, they can grow the 40,000 cells that I'm going to get with my quarterly stem cell treatment.
Okay, so this is for my own curiosity here. How do stem cells know what to do when they're injected, for example, into a particular joint, knee, shoulder? How do they know where they are?
First of all, the pluripotent stem cells, your stem cells look for things to do in your locally and in your bloodstream. Their job is to repair damage. So they can see damage and repair it. That's what they do. So they're not going to do anything to your normal tissue, but if they go around in a simplistic way, but functionally this is what they do. They look for work to do. They look for now. If you don't have any ability to repair, let's say it's bone on bone with no cartilage left or anything, they can't create it out of nothing, but they can go ahead and rejuvenate tissue that's there. And if anything is torn, just like they would heal your skin, they'll heal a partially torn tendon and help you with your rotator cuff.
How does the medical insurance industry view this type of treatment?
They don't cover it. That's, you talked about what's affordable. Unfortunately, anyone who wants to do what I'm describing is going to have to invest, say, $15,000 to $20,000 into doing that, which is a big ask.
Right. And which brings me into another question and another, a very big thing in the pharmaceutical industry, which is Ozempic and the Ozempic-like drugs that can reduce our appetite and help us drop a significant percentage of our body weight, and specifically fat. Do you think that in the long range, these drugs are going to play like a pivotal part in our longevity?
I do. I think the GLP-1 peptide, the P is for peptide, small protein. That's the biggest breakthrough in pharmacology in a long, long time. And what's incredible is it works mainly in the brain to take away various addiction factors. I find it interesting as they're putting out association studies, like, people who are on the GLP-1 medicines. And by the way, tirzepatide is the better one over semaglutide. So the best ones are Monjaro for diabetes and Zepbound for weight. Wegovy and Ozempic are good, but the others they do two receptors. The tirzepatide hits two receptors. There's going to be new ones out that go even further than those two, and it looks like we're going to have some pills available in the near future. But there's no question the GLP-1 agonists are very, very powerful healing medications. And, it's yet to be shown how well they contribute to longevity.
Here comes the philosophical side of being. Does it make sense for us to live into our mid-100s? Are we supposed to?
That's a great question. And David Sinclair in his longevity book goes into that philosophy quite well. Our birth rates are going down for most populations. The human race is not looking like it's going to continue to explode, except for populations that are enlarging. And unfortunately, those are low-income populations that don't have access to birth control and are not, in a sense, the best population for the health of our species. So there's a lot of philosophical parts to it, but the math has been done that the wisdom that come from the elderly, if we're healthy elderly, we don't cost the system all the money that unhealthy elderly cost. And if we can be healthy right up to the end of our mortality as much as possible, that's going to be, cost effective, and I think we can contribute to society. But you're right. There is the attitude that we need to get out of the way for the younger generation to have all the resources.
The other concern, which is, kind of hypothetical, but maybe not, is if, let's say, we found a, sustainable way for humans to get into their, early to mid 100s, for example, are we risking unmasking certain conditions that we were never supposed to see as a result of changes in our DNA or whatnot?
It's a great, theoretical question. I mean, going back to Peter Attia, we're going to unload more cancers that we would have not seen before. That's certainly a possibility. But I mean, the common causes of death, I think, will continue as being the risk factors, and heart disease, cancer, for example. Autoimmune disease, I think we can put the lid on by purifying our diet and lifestyle and make it less common. But really, the real issues for can we keep our bones healthy enough to avoid the frailty and all the fractures and the things that come from falling? And there's how do you keep a vibrant, healthy body if you're going to extend it? You got to do it in a lot of different ways.
It kind of brings up an interesting point because, into the 60s and 70s, I've anecdotally, having been in a hospital-based practice, I've come across a lot of situations where the sentinel event is the breaking of a bone, hip bone, for example. And that seems to have a very high morbidity and mortality associated with it. Can you explain that a little bit? Why is that such a big event in our life, especially when we can fix it?
When we can fix it. I mean, well, it causes frail people to end up spending more time in bed. The quality of their life, they don't bounce back from the recovery of a hip fracture, for example, like they would have. So often it's an event that results in a progression of their mortality. On the other hand, if they're very, very healthy people, first of all, I think we can prevent that. I mean, when football players fall down, they don't break their hips. They do just fine, bounce right back up. So the key is to keep bones that are not, osteoporotic. And I know that we can avoid that, not so much through the drugs. The drugs don't really make normal bone. But, we have two different places in the valley here, OsteoStrong and the biodensity, which without drugs, using a power plate and leg press type devices, are able to send much stronger signals. It isn't just about walking, which of course helps, but we need to send signals to, keep our hips and our spine as strong as possible. And I think we can do that for decades to come. These efforts have a real payoff. And of course, take your D3 with K2. That's vital.
And I'm obviously a lot less learned about all this than you are, but it seems to me that going beyond that threshold of 80, for example, the age of 80 or even 75 seems to be critically dependent on four factors: our bone health, our lean muscle mass, our gut biome, and our brain health. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
That's a very accurate statement. Now, Joseph, I just turned 75. So, and people are amazed when I say that. I was in the clinic here supervising residents, and I have these come to Jesus talks with a lot of people who aren't living a healthy lifestyle. And I had a guy who was 60 and not being very healthy. And, when I told him I was 75, he looked at me like, well, you got to be kidding me, because I probably look 50 to many people.
You look great.
Well, thank you. That's not my family. That's not my genes. It's what I do to work on staying young. So, Dale Bredesen, the biologist who's devoted his life to keeping a healthy brain, his latest work is called The Ageless Brain: How to Sharpen Your Mind for a Lifetime. And it's a masterpiece book. It's a wonderful, and it's convinced me. And he talks about, doctors who are able to work professionally right up to the age of 100 and beyond, and what you need to do to have an ageless brain, which is, it's the manual that I use to keep my brain very healthy. But you got to work on it. And the environment kind of works against you, especially all our processed foods and all the stress that we have, and there's so many things that are aging our brains that we can avoid them.
Another hot topic, obviously, which has been around for a bit, actually, is this whole idea of epigenetics, the idea that we can switch on or off, sets of genes, and that can actually be transmitted to our next generation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everything is epigenetic once we're born, and even in the uterus. I mean, our genetics is nothing but a blueprint for us. It's not active, it's passive. But what we do, the epigenetics, is the impact of the environment on our genes. And so it's all about the environment. So what we do about it, all the aging clocks are really epigenetic clocks, and it's really how we've framed our own environment for longevity. And, we can see the lack of that in many parts of the world and certainly many circumstances. But everything we've been talking about is epigenetic. That is, how can you do anti-aging work to extend our lifespan?
So is it fair to say that if I were to start on this new crazy diet of drinking 20 cans of regular Coke a day for 6 months, would my genetic makeup change?
Your health would change. Your epigenetic makeup, it's not going to cause mutations in your DNA, but what comes out of yourself in terms of your health, that's why RNA is really where the action is, not in DNA. And that's the RNA is really what happens when things travel out of our genes and all the proteins that are made from that. And that's really the critical area of that. We have 98% the same DNA as a bonobo and a chimpanzee, but there's a lot of things that happen beyond the DNA. And sure, the Coke is just going to mess up your metabolism so badly that your life expectancy will have declined.
Is the primary process in that what we understand to be this process of what we call methylation of genes, of proteins in our body? Is that the whole idea behind aging?
Well, it's a big part of it. Methylation is a part of healthy genes and healthy gene expression. That's why I take SAMI every day for improved methylation. But that's again, you'll have improved methylation by taking all the right diet and supplements and avoiding the ultra processed foods and others that get in the way of healthy methylation.
Sure. Now, as we're coming to the end of our conversation, I have to ask, my listeners kind of have come from a broad range of backgrounds and ages. If someone's listening who's in their 60s or 70s, would you say it's too late to start any of these interventions?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think it's ever too late to make yourself healthier. And certainly, if you're only in your 60s, which that's not nowhere near too late. But you might want to find out what your epigenetic age is. Go ahead and have it tested. There's a number of nice methods to do that. When I was at the meeting I was at, I did the 150 blood tests that Life Extension offers through LabCorp. I went ahead and paid the $299 special to get all those done, most of which I was doing anyways. But it was nice that it came back with my epigenetic age being, about 15 years younger than I am, which was kind of reinforcing. But yes, I mean, there's a number of ways to measure our biologic age, whether it be our grip strength or, a number of factors. And my in-body that we do in our office is a very, very good predictor of your health. So yes, find out where you're at and make it better. David Sinclair, who's about 60 years old, he had a father who was in a very stressful job, and he was really not at all healthy when he retired. Fortunately, he got to retire at 65. But now, in his mid-80s, he's climbing mountains. He's done all the things he could do after retirement to help his longevity based on the science of his son. And he's just a wonderful example of what you can do if you apply all the principles of longevity.
Dr. Scherger, as usual, you've been a wealth of information, fascinating stuff. And I feel like we could talk about this for another few hours. And I'm obviously going to invite you back, and because I just enjoyed the conversation so much. I feel like I learned so much from you.
Thank you, Joseph. Let me mention one more thing, if I could. There have emerged in the U.S. and around the world longevity clinics. These are clinics that are doing everything available to extend your longevity. And Peter Diamandis, who runs one of these called Fountain Life, has a book, the Longevity Guidebook, which kind of lays it all out. But locally, a Dr. Jeff Smith has got involved with a company out of Austin, Texas called Humanaut, human with an AUT at the end, another one of these longevity clinics that you can join. And it will do everything that we know now scientifically to expand your lifespan. Now, you might be taking about 75 supplements a day. You're on a pretty strict diet and other activities, and you're spending about $30,000 a year to be part of one of these longevity clinics. But that's really kind of where the leading edge of longevity science is being practiced.
So you might live to your 120s and 130s, but you might be broke.
Who knows? Certainly, you can't count on Social Security getting you there.
Well, Dr. Scherger, as usual, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome, Joseph.
As with the previous time, I'm going to include in my show notes a link to your website and to the books that you've written, and would love to have you back.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Take care.
So
good discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. That brings us to the end of another episode of All Ask the Questions around here. I'm Dr. Elisha, and I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on and perhaps something to smile about. If you enjoy what you heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next week for another journey through life's complexities and comforts.